have a funny story before we get started.
Do it.
We haven't done that in a while.
Do it.
So did you see the controversy with the Bat Peony?
I've seen the general discussion.
Okay.
That there's been censorship of it.
Yeah, so like they released this new comic called Batman Damned, which is like a darker Batman tale. It's more like a detective-y one. It's on their like Black Label line, DC Black Label, which is supposed to be a more mature, adult-oriented thing.
Interesting.
Apparently not, but so they released that
because everyone knows a peony is too adult,
too controversial.
Can't do that.
So yeah, they released it, and then the internet freaked because like towards like the middle of the comic, like you kind of see like the outline or the shadow of Bruce Wayne's peony for the first time.
His wing wang.
His wing wang. His ding dong.
Oh boy. Ring the bells.
Ding dong, ding dong. So, which is interesting because it's like 2 pages out of like this whole book, and so like everybody's like flipping out. I didn't really see anybody who was actually complaining about it. I don't know where those
like
people came from and how they had so much impact.
Sure.
But basically, DC ended up censoring it for some reason.
Wait, so the controversy was that you did see it, and so then they were
the controversy was
covered?
that you did see the penis.
You can't say that.
You can't say that.
His wing wang.
His wing wong.
His wing wong.
So yeah, the controversy was that you could see it, and I don't know. I didn't see any of these people. I don't know who they were, what side of anything they were on, like why they didn't want to see this bat phallus. It was probably like it was probably parents or something who it's like the classic
Batman
parents
damned.
like, first of all, it's mature rated, so like why are you letting your kid read it in the first place? And if you're gonna let them read it, then you got to be open to all the possibilities. I just find it funny
just the way things go. That literally it wasn't like Batman, a happy tale, and then it's like, what? There's penises in this. It's like Batman damned, and it's like, what could possibly go wrong?
Literally the title, yeah.
There's no way that there's ever going to be anything wrong with this Batman comic.
Exactly. So yeah, that happened. The internet freaked, which is not surprising. Just
dude, I don't get shocked anymore.
So
by
DC
shock.
somehow, I don't know who was influencing this, but DC decided to censor it, except they've come out and said that they're not actually going to reprint it. And so like the only copies that exist was the first print run that has the penis in it. And then from now on, it's like you either buy the digital copy or wait till like the full book comes out.
Or you grab your kushpa and you tuck it and you say, it's okay.
Yep. Ooh. So originally they were going to censor it and release a new print. And then they came out later saying we're actually not going to reprint it at all.
Severance all.
I don't know why. Like, is it that hard to remove?
This just sounds weird.
It's stupid.
It sounds like
But the point of the story is that I, because of the controversy, went to the comic store that day
and bought one.
Well, I wanted to, so I went there and I went there to pick up a different comic, and then I was like,
sure.
"Do you guys have the new issue of Batman Damned?" And he's like, "Oh no, we sold out of all the copies already. Do you want me to put in an order for you because we're gonna get a new shipment?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. I'll wait." In my mind at that time, I was like, it's probably not going to have the penis in it anymore because, like, the second print. I assumed it would be the second print run.
Right.
And so, like, I think that was last Wednesday. And then I go there on Monday, or no, Thursday? Friday? I don't remember when I went.
You picked it up.
I went to pick it up.
Yeah.
And I was getting a different comic, which is Doomsday Clock.
Nice.
But they didn't bring out the Batman one, so I was like, "Do you guys have the Batman one?" He's like, "Oh, the second one hasn't come out yet." And I was like, "No, like, do you have the first issue still?" And he's like, "Oh yeah," and he picks it up off a stack, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, "Where the heck did you get those? They weren't there before." And it's still at this point, I was assuming it was a censored version.
Sure.
And so like I get it, and I go out to my car, and I flip through it to see which version it is. But I didn't want to read it, so I like looked, and it actually has it in there.
Oh,
so I was like, let's go.
Throw a fit.
I got the uncensored version.
Interesting.
Funny enough, they're selling for like $100 right now, and I paid $7 for it. So
you gonna sell it?
I might. I'm gonna hold out because, in the light of the news that, one, it's the only printing, and two, it's an uncensored version.
That's a pretty rare.
It's gonna be even rarer
book,
once people start realizing how scarce they actually are because it was a pretty small print run.
Huh.
So yeah. I might hold out for a little while.
Dude, you and these magical books worth lots of money.
I know. Whoever thought Bruce Wayne's wiener would be worth $100.
Dude, I can't wait for the future when people are doing like, I don't know, what would you call it? The auction things where it's like, and here we have this antiquated piece of paper with drawings of a superhero apparently and his giant wang. $1 million, sir.
Hold up the number. Ding.
Yeah, 1 million. I was going. We got $2 million for the Batman penis. It's just like, oh boy, that's a funny story.
Yeah.
I don't have any funny stories like that. Do I? Did anything happen this week? No, nothing happened.
So
this week.
that was my tale of the Batwang.
Interesting.
Batman's second Dick Grayson, not to be confused with Robin.
I don't get it. Okay.
Robin's name is Dick Grayson.
Interesting.
And
but
this was the sighting of his other Dick Grayson.
His other Dick Grayson. Wow. Start the show.
What up, punks? Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast, where we bring pop culture to the pit every week, including the Batwang. This week we'll be jumping
just flopping around.
We'll be jumping into cyberspace to decode the genre of cyberpunk for y'all, because we've been so hyped on it lately. Some of you might not even know what it is, so we're gonna talk about it. Talk about some movies, books, shows, whatever, and stuff we've been reading and what we like about the genre. So yeah. But before we jump into that, what have you been up to, Coach?
I realized I did not write down anything, so I'll have to come up.
Yeah, you didn't write down anything. If it's not on the doc, you didn't do it.
It's true. Shoot. I've been playing, honestly, like I've just been, it was my goal at the start of the week that I'm not close to beating Spider-Man, but they actually have a percentage filler, so I'm at 61, 62%, I think. So I'm a good chunk through the game. So narratively, it's starting to pick up where there's kind of an establishment of who the key villain is. And
does the percentage only count like the story, or is it like literally everything? Like all the collectibles, all the suits, all the
I don't keep
missions,
track of it every second I'm playing. So it's not like I finish a side quest and I'm like, oh, I wonder how many percentage points I went up. It's more like I go through, like I spent a bunch of time and beat like all the Black Cat missions, and I got all the backpacks, and I finished a couple side quests, and I was like, oh, I went up like 15%, like by the like when I saved the game and then checked out.
I wonder how long it takes to like beat that game,
because
I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter post pictures of them like platinuming it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty quick to beat. Especially because a lot of the side quest stuff, once you unlock all the towers that show you where everything is, are visible, and you can literally, if you wanted to, like, I actually prefer it that way, because I think it was easy to get all the towers, and then it's really easy to keep track of everything that is still available. And so you can basically, if you want, like with the backpacks, there's like 50 of them, but I think I got them all in like 30 minutes, literally, because you're just like, okay, go to this one, okay, go to this one, and by this time in the game, I've leveled up certain abilities that I can just zoom across the city pretty effortlessly. But there's still stuff that hasn't even been unlocked yet, like with certain challenges and things like that, and certain missions. So, yeah, I'm still loving it. It's still really fun. I think I got burned out a little bit just because it is a very completionist style game. Like, it's not that it's like an empty story, that the story isn't interesting, but it goes very quickly. So you almost like, if you just played the story missions back to back to back to back, you could probably beat it pretty quickly. At least it's
more
what
of the
I'm
focus is on like the exploration and the collecting and getting cool stuff. And
right. But I do know that there's a point from the E3 trailer, like I haven't gotten to this point in the game, but I know there's a point in the E3 trailer where you go to Rikers, where all the main villains are, and they all like escape, basically. And so I could just be hitting the halfway point, honestly, like with the story. So could very well be that all these villains get out and you have to take them all out one by one across the city, or stuff happens. Could be that you go to Rikers and actually nothing happens during that whole sequence. Like, I have no idea. So yeah.
Or like it all just happens in like the prison, and then once you leave, they're all back in prison or something.
Yeah. So I have no idea. But so far so good. Loving it. I did finally just unlock the 2099 suit, which is probably my fave, just because I love they did an awesome job recreating it in the game. So there's I did a couple missions actually, like story missions with it. So to see it in cutscenes was really
That's
weird,
sick, dude.
but it's really cool. It's one of the coolest looking ones. But it's been awesome seeing the different suits that they have and that they've designed. I don't know how many of them were custom built for the game. They've got a number of them that are from other famous Spider-Man stuff. Like they've got the Homecoming one, the Iron Spider. They've got the Noir. There's like a Noir Spider-Man.
I need to check that comic out because that sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty dope. So, so it's still a lot of fun. I think it's a great game if you want something that's easy to set down. I think that's one of the reasons I've been avoiding The Witcher is I know that
easy to set down.
Exactly. I know once I get on a couple missions and I kind of get in the groove of it, I'm just going to want to play it for like 10 hours straight. And I know even if I did that, I'd be maybe hacking off like a small chip of it.
Yeah, you do like 4 quests and it's get some cool gear and you're like, I did nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a little daunting. Whereas with this, it's like, oh, I played for like an hour and I took out like 15% of the game, at least according to statistically. But yeah, no, been loving it. I've been listening to a lot of music stuff that's come out recently. Thrice's new album is awesome. I was jamming some Beartooth, their new album in the car.
Check out their new album.
It's good. I love how their sound has kind of evolved to be more. It just sounds fuller, like their earlier albums.
They started out as like a thrashy punk band, and then
it just
kind of evolved into just a more like almost like heavy metal, like rock.
Yeah,
but like with that hardcore
exactly.
tinge to it.
Yep. Yeah. So I really like how their new. I like what their new sound is hedging towards. I think it's their first album. There's some really really good songs on it, but I think the guitars sound really empty. Like the whole it's very. I don't know how to describe it, but basically I think
it's because they only had one
guitarist, and I don't even know if they had a bassist or anything. They might have.
They did, but he. At least on the first EP, the Sick EP, they just had one guitar and a bass, and then he filtered his bass through like a distortion amp to get like that crunchy sound, which makes it sound less full, which is what hardcore punk tends to sound like. But yeah, I feel
so it's really good. So I'm really liking the sound of it, and
it's called Disease, right?
Disease, yeah. Okay. So that's been awesome. Has there been anything else I've been listening to on that front? Been trying to do more writing. I did a bunch of design stuff I'm realizing that my brain just does really well thinking about other things in like pulling something I'm working on. So if it's like writing, then like for a story, it's like, oh, well, there's all these, cyberpunk gangs in them. It's like, okay, well, like, let's make their logos and just one, get the practice because I need to learn this stuff anyway.
And but two, it's
too,
like,
yeah, just do whatever. So that's been fun. Caught Entei today.
Yeah, you did.
I'm running out of stuff to say. I honestly, I feel bad. I should have done more this week, but I feel like I just
I feel you. I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I keep saying the same things every week because
some of them are just so big that it's just taking forever to finish them, and so I don't have a lot to do.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited for World Ends With You is in 2 weeks, I think.
I'm gonna have to check that out when you get it.
Yeah, so I'm stoked. I love that game. It's a great game. And yeah, we've got some Dynamite titles coming out October with Assassin's Creed Tuesday, Mario Party Friday. No, I'm probably gonna wait till I realized I had to kind of pick some things where I was like, oh, we're kind of running into a crunch. I need to probably cancel some pre-order stuff, and I realized that basically Best Buy, even when Assassin's Creed Origins came out, that was on sale. I don't think as much as they usually do, but it was like $40. So it's like that's still even cheaper than I would get it with Gamers Club. So I'd rather take the 20 discount and get it in like a month, and beat The World Ends With You and Spider-Man and The Witcher and like
that's where I'm kind of at. It's like I'm just not buying any games until Pokemon because I have to beat The Witcher.
Well, and there's exactly. And there's so many other things
won't.
Too. Yeah, for real. So yeah, I think I'm trying to be better about not stockpiling on. I'm trying to stick to like one game a month, like one big title that I want to play. So it's really hard. It's really hard to say no to Red. If I didn't have The Witcher on my plate, I would say the Red Dead Redemption is people are saying is
that'll be a Black Friday
unreal.
One for me again too.
Yeah, so
I don't have a nice stockpile to start the year with.
Yep. So if they have a big deal on Red Dead, definitely going for that. They always discount Assassin's Creed, so I'll probably pick it up in November. But Other than
I
that,
bet Red Dead will be discounted.
I don't
Ubisoft is
know.
usually pretty good with discounting things too, because Assassin's Creed is.
Yeah,
Or no, that's Rockstar. Never
yeah.
mind,
So I don't think they will, just because the reason being that
they don't have.
they don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no need. Whereas Assassin's Creed, I think Ubisoft has just always done that because it just lets a larger body. They just print so many copies and they just let a larger body of people hop on the
And
bandwagon.
they have
then
so
for
many
cheaper.
games that they're just like,
Exactly.
we're raking in the dough.
Yeah,
from
they're like,
every
who
which
cares?
way. Yeah.
take $40 off. We don't care.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I've been seeing with Nintendo online, people are just like, whatever, it's kind of useless.
Yeah, I read an
But-
article that was basically like, you don't actually need this service for anything. Like,
Unless you're playing these specific games. But
yeah, like
even then.
it's basically like with PlayStation and Xbox, you kind of like need
Literally
them now
need
to
it.
feel like you're part of the ecosystem. But Nintendo is just like, unless you're specifically playing these games, then it's like,
Right,
you don't need
exactly.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, the only thing is like, well, okay, maybe a Fortnite you needed it to play. I could see for people being, if there's a lot of kids who want to play, but you don't. That's
don't
not a
need it
paid
for
because
Fortnite,
I think
yeah.
it's off Epic servers, so you don't have to do it through Nintendo. And I never play Nintendo games online. Like, I have Mario Kart and Splatoon, which I could, but nah, dog. That ain't
Not
happening.
about it.
So that's it, man. I don't have a lot. It's kind of a boring life this week, but
Chill life.
yeah,
It's all good.
can't complain.
Yeah, I've been in a pretty similar boat. I'm still cranking away at Game of Thrones. I'm on season 7 now, which is the final season until next
Cool.
year.
So you'll be caught up.
So I'll be caught up probably
Sure.
at the end of next week
Nice.
at the current rate I'm going.
Cool.
Maybe after this weekend, we'll see.
I would not be surprised.
I watched like 3 episodes last night, so
Are they like an hour a piece or
Yeah.
okay? So they're not like, I don't know if you ever watched the BBC Sherlock where it's like an hour and a half long. So it's
Yeah.
just straight hour.
it's just an hour, yeah.
Okay.
And then it ends up being like 50 something minutes because there's a previously on
breaks
Game
and
of
things.
Thrones in the
Sure.
beginning, and then like director and writer commentary at the end. So then it's like 55 minutes.
Got it.
So
Okay.
Still long. So 3 episodes is still a lot of TV to watch, but
Right.
I get hooked, and then it's like it's 11:30. I'm not gonna do anything else anyway, so might as well watch one
That's-
more.
It's fair. Logical.
So yeah, and with that, I've also been playing The Witcher. Still, I've gotten pretty far now. It's super fun. It's still just a blast to play, and like I started doing some of the like treasure hunts to get the dope Witcher gear, which is the best gear in the game. And there's like Witcher gear for each of the schools that the Witcher's trained at.
For sure.
So there's like 6 different sets you can get. And then with those sets, there's like 4 to 6 upgrade sets that you can get to upgrade them. So it's just
Whoa.
like
Lot
at
of
each
stuff to
stage
find.
of leveling, like
Sure.
it's like 14, 18, 20, 22. Like there's a whole new upgrade diagrams you can find in the world and then like upgrade it. And it's so fun. And the gear just looks so sick. So
Definitely. That is the one thing I'm really excited with this playthrough is to actually, I feel like I'm not playing it for the story as much as I was, or I'm feel like because of what CD Projekt has been showcasing with Cyberpunk, I actually want to play The Witcher for the world,
yeah.
which is I usually don't do. So it's kind of not unsettling, but it's weird. It's a weird
Yeah.
feeling.
It's
I don't normally do that. So
for sure. I'm in the same boat. Like the story is actually pretty interesting, but I think if you just played the story, it would be pretty short. Actually, it'd probably still be like 40 hours,
which
of
is
playtime.
ginormous.
Yeah. Probably even more than that. But it's been fun just like, because I'll be like, I want to get to the main story, but then it's like I have 10 side quests I need to do.
Yeah.
And then I'll do like 2 or 3 of them. And then all of a sudden I've still got 10 side quests. I'm like, where the heck did all these come from? And it's like, things keep like branching. And as soon as
Sure.
you do like one thing for someone, they're like, hey, can you come talk to me? And then you're like, oh, that's another freaking quest. And so like, there's just so much stuff to do. And like, everything has like this enriching story and it builds into the lore of the world. And like, it's crazy.
Cool.
It's just imagining if they can take this and put it into like a first person shooter cyberpunk world, like it's just going to be off the chains, man.
Dope.
So
I'm stoked.
it gets me really excited. So
I do want to ask you. So I am significantly farther behind you, I think, just in terms of even from traipsing horizontally in the narrative. What are your suggestions, and what are the things that I should make sure to be aware of, or to do, or to look out for that I might be missing or like not doing well?
I think the key thing for me was just making potions, because it's not something they tell you how to do at all. Like they don't say, hey, all right, next after you learn how to train, we're going to teach you how to make potions and how health systems work. So I think learning how to make the Swallow Potion and the Thunderbolt Potion, which is basically like health and power amplifying. And then also on top of that, realizing that potions aren't there to like spam, because as soon as you drink 3 potions, you're basically like poisoned, and then you like start losing health. So like it's kind of like just learning that balance and like being careful in combat, which I'm playing on easy, so it's like not super hard. But yeah, other than that, there's not a ton of things that you'll miss necessarily. I would say like, at least for me, I'm playing on easy, so like I'm level 20 and I can do like level 26 quests. But for you, it's probably like maybe if you're playing on medium, try and stick with the quest level. And so like if you need 16 and you're only like 13, then just do a bunch of Witcher contracts, because those usually give you sick gear or cool trophies that you can put on your horse that like give you more experience and different things. So kind of like basically just doing all the side quests and the treasure hunts and the Witcher contracts, because like you get a lot of cool stuff, and it's just the easiest way to experience the world. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, the potions is the main one. Like they don't tell you how to make them.
They don't tell you how to do anything.
Yeah.
But part of the charm, I guess.
That was like the one thing in my first playthrough that I didn't do, and I was like, frick, where's the health potions? So
sweet.
Yeah.
Cool. What else you been up to?
It's dope. I've been listening to some music. I remember Zach talking about Brockhampton a while ago, and I kind of just wrote it off and didn't listen to him. But I actually went back and listened to him because they just released a new album. So I was like, I'll go check out their old stuff first. And it's actually pretty good. Like, it's like different than anything I've ever heard before. It's kind of like hip hop, R&B, like boy band. Like, it's kind of like this blending of, I don't know. It's super good. I haven't listened to the new album yet. I was just listening to some old stuff, so that's pretty good. Lil Wayne released the Carter 5 on Friday, which has taken him 8 years to do because of his legal battles with Cash Money. And I think he finally won that, and he actually owns the rights to Young Money now. So
interesting.
So yeah, he finally released the Carter 5.
Cool.
Which is pretty good. It definitely takes me back to high school, because senior year was when he released the Carter 4, and I was like big on Lil Wayne in those years. And so like listening to this is kind of like a continuation of that, so it brings me back to those days.
Has he gotten better listening to 5?
I think so. The thing is, like, there's a song with Kendrick which is pretty good, but I feel like anything Kendrick's on, he just like outshines the person he's on it with. Other than that, there isn't really a ton of hits, I would say. Like, it kind of just all blends together, which is probably a bad thing. So time will tell. I think there's a lot of hype surrounding it right now because it's been 8 years. So, but I don't know. It's decent. He's got some good flows, some funny lines. Like, Lil Wayne's always been kind of just like cheesy, and he comes up with like goofy lines and stuff. So, and then Logic released a new album as well called Young Sinatra 4. Which I haven't listened to the whole thing of that yet, but there's some good tracks on there. He's got one with Wale. I forget what it's called, something in Running, which is super good. And he's got one with the Wu-Tang Clan.
Nice.
Like all of the guys from Wu-Tang.
That's tight.
It's like a
Wu-Tang.
It's like the whole album is kind of like a classic like boom bap sort of style, like old school hip hop beats. So it's pretty good actually.
Cool.
And he's got some songs where he just raps like faster than I've ever heard him rap before. So it's like, I don't know. It's good.
The man spits.
So yeah, I've been on hip hop lately.
Cool.
And then last weekend, I watched Thor Ragnarok with Evan. So
such a good flick.
It's been interesting watching, because now we're caught up basically. So we've seen every MCU film to date now, and I've seen most of them twice at this point. It's been interesting going from Iron Man 1 all the way down to Thor Ragnarok now, and kind of seeing, especially after like Civil War, how like things shift in an interesting way in the MCU. And then you get Civil War and Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther and Guardians 2, I think. And it kind of like, it's weird to imagine that it's been 10 years and the movies are only getting better. Like, I don't know. It seems like they should be getting worse at some point. And some
Yeah.
people might say they are getting worse, but I think from a technical storytelling standpoint, like I feel like they're stronger than they've ever been, like character-wise, and the characters are all kind of coming into, it's almost like they're all like fulfilling their arc potential now, and it's kind of like they're going to start passing off the torch to some different characters and stuff. So
Cool.
it's interesting having seen that now in a more progression
Mm-hmm.
in a shorter span of time. So
What has Evan felt? Because she hasn't, like, this is her first foray into watching all of them back to back to back.
yeah,
Because I know when we went with Gloria and her to see Infinity War, we were all geeked. We were like,
Yep.
what? And they were kind of like, what? But I don't understand, like, half
yeah,
of it.
I don't get any of this. Yeah, she's been like super excited about it, and I think I didn't ask about Thor Ragnarok. She really liked it. She likes Thor's progression, kind of like from 1 to 2 to 3. It's a little bit rocky in 1 to
Sure.
2, but if you kind of like ignore some of the stuff, his progression is still there as like a person per se. But I didn't ask her how that ranks with the other ones, but so far she said Civil War is her favorite.
That's a good
out of
one.
all of them,
That's up there. Yeah.
which it's not up there for me. I mean, it's definitely a good one, but I think my top 3 are probably Infinity War, which is contingent on the second one because I'm seeing them as one giant movie.
Sure.
And then Guardians 2 and I forget what the third one is. Must not have been that. Oh, Ragnarok, obviously.
Interesting.
But I think seeing Ragnarok the second time, it wasn't as good as I thought it was the first time.
I would say the same.
Because the
That's how I
jokes with
felt.
Hulk and Thor didn't land as well the second time. It was kind of just like, that's cute.
It was something interesting because this is one of the other things that we did. I was telling you this earlier today. But Gloria and I watched Deadpool 2 last night, and it was as funny as I remember it being, but I think it was one of those movies, and I would maybe guess the same thing with Thor Ragnarok, that it's very contextual of watching it with other people who also get it, that it like, we're like, we get this, like, we get this because we've seen all the movies, whereas like, with Deadpool 2, so much of the humor, I feel like I'm sounding like an old humor. With Deadpool 2, so much of the humor is contingent on all these things. But there's so much information that you need to actually understand the jokes to the depth that makes it funny, you know? So when he's stealing all Professor X's stuff, and it's not just that, oh, he's touching and playing with things that he shouldn't. It's like Professor X is dead, so there's kind of a disrespect that's happening where he's like, I'm just going to wear his helmet and pretend that I can see everything.
Yeah.
Or when he's like making fun of like certain things, he's also making fun of like bad movies that the majority of people didn't see. So if you saw them, you also get it. And so there was these things that I was kind of like chuckling at, but I remember just like busting a gut in the theater. And I feel like they were jokes that land once. And once you hear them, it's like, it's really funny because there's a shock value, and then there's also an informational value, and then there's a self-referential value, but all those things are kind of gone the second time that you see them. Whereas I feel like that's kind of what happened when we watched Thor Ragnarok together. Like, we both really liked it. And it's one of the better written, interesting Marvel movies, I think, because it's just very different. But I think some of the jokes that felt like it stood out just didn't carry the second time over value.
Yeah, I remember when we saw the first one, because I think we saw it together.
Yep.
You, me, and Zach,
Yeah.
maybe. And I remember coming out of that thinking, like, this is actually one of the funniest, like, Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. But watching it the second time, I'm like, this is definitely not, like, one of the funniest. Like, the jokes are all still funny, and, like, seeing the relationship between Hulk and Thor and different things like that are funny, but it's, like, the kind of, like you said, the kind of humor that the second time is just like, I remember that being really funny.
Right. And it's like, I don't think
it's
that
not
means
bad.
Exactly.
It's just, it's like it kind of like takes the veil away, and you realize that it's not what the movie's trying to do anyway. Like, it's not trying to necessarily be funny. It's just trying to depict their relationship realistically.
Yeah.
And which they do, I think.
Yeah.
So, but I think the thing I like about Thor is that he's a god. And I think with the first two movies, they focused way too much on Thor trying to be a human being when he's not a human being at all.
Yeah.
He's just a god.
Definitely.
And so, like, that's what I liked about the third one was they finally acknowledged that he's just a really powerful godlike person, and like we're gonna throw him in these situations and then see how he gets out of them, basically, or like how is he gonna save his planet or whatever. So and I thought that was interesting how the story plays out, and like it doesn't play out in the way that you would want it to in a normal narrative structure. So it's a good movie. I'm glad I saw it the second time. So
solid.
I'm excited to see Infinity War again. In the context of having rewatched everything a second time, and then also jump into the. I'm tempted because I know Evan doesn't want to do this, but they're doing double features where you can just watch them in a row. So I'm tempted to watch it once with Evan and then go see it again as a double feature.
I would do it
because that would be kind of cool to see it back to back.
I would absolutely do that.
So we should do that and then do a podcast about it or something. So yeah, that's mostly what I've been up to this week.
Yeah. Captain Marvel's looking dope, like costuming and like seeing young Ronan and the Krull, right? I got the name.
The Krull, yeah.
I was like, I have all these alien things that I'm like going through my brain, but yeah, I'm really interested to see how they pull that into the narrative and if they're potentially going to use that as a launching off point for like future things after this run of the universe is
I bet they will. I think she's going to be the new Iron Man. Like the new sort of leader of the,
because I know she has been in the comics, correct? Like she's been kind of one of the front runners. So
I think so.
That'd be sweet. I'd be fine.
I wouldn't complain.
Yeah, I hope they make Sam what's his face Cap, or they make Falcon Cap, and then
that'd be dope. Or a Bucky Cap would be cool.
Yeah. I just want them to like pass off the torch to a whole bunch of people like that. Even if like how they take out Thanos and everything like isn't super amazing, which I don't think that's going to be the case, but even if it's not this like spectacular thing, I just want them to pass off the torch.
Yeah, I think the more important part about the movie is not how they defeat Thanos, it's how they pass the torch to the next generation.
Yeah, definitely.
And the movie's going to be contingent on how they balance those two things, because you don't want the movie to be basically like Batman vs Superman, where the whole point of the movie is to set up the next movie. So you want it to be like the first Avengers, where like it is its own movie, it's its own narrative, it's like it has the whole structure, and then the second movie adds to it to some extent, but like it's not dependent on it.
Definitely.
And so with the second one, I'm thinking the same thing. Like it should be a launching off point for the next generation of superheroes, but that shouldn't be the whole point of the movie. The movie should wrap up what it started in the first one. So
totes my goats.
It's going to be the event of the century, I think.
Dude,
it's crazy.
I'm gonna be so juiced. Like,
I know.
Yeah, I'm
not gonna be able to sleep the night before. Like, come on,
I'm so excited. What's gonna happen? But real quick, do you want to go see Venom next week?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, we should.
I got the T-shirt with that loot box, so like I have to see it now.
Yeah.
The only reason I want to see it is because I just want to confirm how bad it is, and then just leave the trilogy alone that they're saying they're making.
Yeah.
So.
I think that would be a fun one to do a podcast on.
Yeah,
because like
we're kind of
it's better when we do movies we don't like.
Yes,
because then we just rail on it,
just go crazy.
So yeah, I would do that.
Okay, cool.
So,
we can get tickets after this, but
sounds good.
Dope.
So yeah, that's everything I've been up to.
Pop culture fill in. There it is. Right there.
I've never heard that one before.
What's on your pop culture fill in?
Fill in. It's not pop culture updates. It's fill in.
Fill in the blank.
So you can't participate because it's only me.
Crud. I don't have a cool name thing. That's fine.
That's fine.
Penny for your thoughts.
Penny for your thoughts. So yeah, I figured we could start off the discussion just with, I found a definition from Wikipedia.
Sure.
Of what cyberpunk is, and then we can kind of talk about the books we've been reading, and then go from there.
Yeah.
So from Wikipedia, this is what cyberpunk is. Cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction in a futuristic setting that tends to focus on a combination of low life and high tech, featuring advanced technological and scientific advancements such as artificial intelligence and cybernetics, juxtaposed with a degree of social breakdown or radical change in the social order. So yeah. that's a lot of stuff.
That's what it is.
And can be interpreted in many ways. So yeah.
Yes, it can.
So you've been reading, or you finished Neuromancer.
I finished William Gibson's Neuromancer, and I didn't realize how huge a book that was in the cyberpunk like subculture.
From what I
fandom,
found, he was one of like
the people,
the first people that actually do cyberpunk as it is
yes.
today. There's a couple books that came before that kind of like set the stage.
Yeah. I listened to, there's an awesome kind of, it's not really, it's like an interview, but it's also a comic panel at a recent convention with Eurogamer. Was talking to Mike Pondsmith, who we're going to bring up his name a couple times probably throughout this, but he was the writer and creator of the tabletop RPG Cyberpunk 2020, which is the game that a lot of the narrative and world building content is being pulled into Cyberpunk 2077. So he's actually one of the lead consults on Cyberpunk 2077. So it's super interesting because one, he talks about his role in actually like helping with the game and how he actually has a background in gaming. So he wasn't just kind of like, well, I wrote the book, so I know everything that you should and shouldn't do. But he actually talks about what actually went into like, okay, this is a great idea from the tabletop version, but how are you going to translate that into gaming speak in terms of how the player is going to experience this with the controller in their hands or with the keyboard? And so it's very cool. He's like, he's a very intelligent guy, like just his view of it. So it's very interesting. It's very easy to just, throw on in the background and play or listen along with. But Neuromancer was one of the books that he threw out. There was referring to that, in that video, there's a bunch of questions that pop up and people asking about certain things. But one of the people was saying how, I'm not really super into cyberpunk stuff, but I've kind of heard it as a genre. I've always been interested with some of the elements. What should I go to? And so he listed William Gibson. He basically just read all of Gibson's catalog, especially Neuromancer, which was interesting because I didn't realize it was such a, and everyone was like, yeah, clapping. And Snow Crash was one of the other ones, which
the two books we're reading.
Exactly. But I honestly didn't realize like that Neuromancer was such a big deal. Like everyone brings it up, but just the way he was talking about it, he was like, this embodies what cyberpunk is. It's like, I had a quote from it that he said, I had a couple quotes from him, but one of them was, cyberpunk isn't about saving humanity, it's about saving yourself. And how the genre and the narrative structure with the protagonist tends to look like in cyberpunk mediums is it's the protagonist not being a hero, they're just doing what they want to do. And sometimes, depending on where the writer takes that story, yes, the hero or the protagonist does like do a quote unquote heroic thing or like quote unquote saves the world, but it isn't specifically about them rescuing anything for the sake of rescuing it. It's like, no, I don't want to die, and keeping me from dying includes saving this person. So, therefore, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And in Neuromancer, I think it just completely went over my head. But now that when Pondsmith kind of explained like the base narrative of Neuromancer, the main character Case, basically is hijacked by this group, is done surgery on so that there's these poisons in his system that basically if he doesn't do something if he doesn't go along with these tasks that he's being given and this contract that he's being forced into, if he doesn't do it at the end, if he does do it, they'll give him basically all his body back and they won't they'll take the toxins out or whatever. But if he doesn't, then he just in a certain amount of time, they leak into his system and he dies. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing, he's not doing it to save anybody, to help anything, to take anything down. He's just trying to survive because if he doesn't do it, literally he's dead. Which ends up, protecting certain people or saving certain people at the end. But overall, none of it is about him trying to make the world a better place. He's just trying to not die.
Basically to save himself.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that was really interesting. Like that never clicked for me with the cyberpunk genre.
That is interesting thinking about Snow Crash too, because so far from what I've read, it's very similar. It's like the main character is a hacker, and he currently his motivations are just self motivated. Like he's doing them because they benefit him, sort of. Yeah. But the ramifications for what he's doing could extend unintentionally to other people. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it was weird because I had to grapple with how conditioned I feel like we are to good people in narratives and how we've been conditioned to, yes, they're good people and they have a flaw that they have to overcome, but they're inherently like a good person. It's kind of like how it's designed. It's like Batman fights crime because he wants to make Gotham a better place. And yeah, he's narcissistic, and yeah, he's kind of douchey sometimes, but like that doesn't take away from the fact he's trying to do something
At
good.
the end of the day, he does what's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, some of the other characters, I mean, any superhero is going to fall into that camp, but even the majority of characters in, you know, like different movies and books and games and stuff, I feel like are kind of postured as there's something good about them that you should be rooting for their goodness. Whereas,
like they're good, but they have like a little edge.
Exactly, yeah. But they're still considered like, oh, but they're good, especially in comparison to everyone else. Whereas with Cyberpunk, I think what finally clicked with Pondsmith's quote was everybody's bad. It, like, quote, in a way, everyone is kind of bad. Everyone is out for their own interests. Everyone's just trying to do their own thing. They're not trying to make the world a better place. They're just living. And sometimes that means doing really morally bad things and are, you know, outside of that narrative world's context. And sometimes it means doing like good things. Yeah, I think that just completely went over my head when I was reading Neuromancer. Just how true that is, that everyone's doing things not because it's the right thing to do, it's because it's what they want to do and it's what's going to get them the best thing for them. Which I think having a whole world and like a whole bunch of characters all living and acting that way was very fascinating. And I think it's kind of unsettling because it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because I think, you know, we were even joking on the last episode with Mondo, like, we don't like being the villains in games. Like, we like want to do the right thing. We want to do all this stuff. And now I'm reading all these characters who are terrible people. And, you know, they're kind of doing this kind of good thing, but it's not overall. They're not.
That's interesting.
They're not representable people.
I think that makes sense too, though, because especially like this other quote you've got here, it's by William Gibson.
Yep, Gibson's quote.
You could say cyberpunk is the postmodern version of science fiction.
Yep.
And I think along those veins, like cyberpunk, from what I've seen, tends to focus on the social hierarchy. And so like it tends to be like hyper capitalistic, like companies basically just control everything usually, or like super tech oriented, or and on the hyper capitalistic vein, like hyper individualist, which I think is exactly what this is getting at, is like everybody in the society is just out for themselves in some ways. And it's almost like an objectivist stance. Like each person is just doing what's best for them. And so like, it's so counter to most things we see nowadays, which is what you're saying. It's just interesting to me. I don't know. And I think that's part of the reason why I like cyberpunk things so much, other than like the aesthetics and different things, is just like that individualist aspect of like, well, what would you do if all you had was to look out for yourself, and like that, and the rest of the world was doing that too, and then playing that out in the society. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. One of the other things that Pondsmith said in the Eurogamer discussion that I thought was fascinating is one of the other key markers of cyberpunk is high tech, like low society, or like high tech, low something, basically saying like
high tech, low life.
I think, that's what
the Wikipedia thing said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it's high tech, low life. So the idea that there's incredible technology that is available to a lot of people. It can do a lot of very good things and a lot of very bad things. And the majority of people who use it are using it maliciously. And it was just like, whoa, like that makes a lot of sense. But I thought it was also fascinating so it's fun hearing that your draw was more to like the ideological side, because mine originally was like purely the aesthetic. I love
the same for me. Like,
okay,
I
cool.
love like the 80s vibe, like basically exactly what Blade Runner sets forth as like what cyberpunk looks like. Like that's like big skyscrapers, like cybernetic enhancements, like androids, and kind of just like the aesthetic, basically like the 80s, but like super
for
tech.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that's definitely what drew me into.
I'm curious what you like, why that appeals to you, because I feel like there's so many. Man, like if we sat and made a list of all the different types of genre, you have like fantasy, you have like technological fantasy, you have like, you know, OG kingdoms and castle fantasy, you have more like magic fantasy, you have realistic fiction, you have science fiction, you have like modern day science. Like there's so many branches that you can go in, but like what specifically about the aesthetic and in Cyberpunk spoke to you or makes it interesting to you?
I guess that's where the philosophical part comes in.
Sure.
I think it's the aesthetic with the philosophical underpinnings of like individual identity and social hierarchy, and like I think so much science fiction like Star Trek and Star Wars and all these things have like a positive view of technology in some ways. Like technology is only going to advance human society. Technology is only going to like give us good things and make a utopia, basically. Like we're going to have space travel and all peoples are going to be that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I feel like that's a lot of the times what science fiction has been. And I think Cyberpunk basically just takes our world and makes it more techie. And I think it's kind of like the same thing for me with like BioShock in that aesthetic, or like Fallout in that aesthetic. I just like things that are tied to a certain time period, but like advanced to our world, sort of.
Sure.
So like it kind of like merging our world with an old, like the 80s.
Yeah.
Because I think the 80s specifically like have this, and I think that's where Cyberpunk comes from, is the 80s has this vibe to it where like everything is like, it's after the 70s and it's like everybody's just getting along and everything's happy and like the music's boppy and like poppy and happy, and like it's, you kind of just view the 80s as like this happy time. I mean, I didn't grow up in the 80s, but like that's kind of like, it's kind of like totally, this idealized time where like everything was just fine. But like the point of Cyberpunk is to show like really there was a whole undercurrent of things that weren't fine, but it was kind of like the flashiness of it made it. And so Cyberpunk kind of takes that and extends it and says like, well, what if these got even worse? And so that, I don't know, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the aesthetics with the philosophical underpinnings of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I think I would totally agree. I think that's what sets it apart to me is, I'm trying to think of like what my first introductions to it were, and I don't know if I really have like an entry point. I think like once I got older, all of a sudden there was like Deus Ex and some of the games, like what were some of the other games that you had listed on here? I'm trying to think of things that were around more when I was Tron, like one of the first action movies I ever saw as a kid was on TV. It was like the OG Tron. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that was like a Cyberpunk thing, but like totally is, or just at least like it's a technology fueled thing, and there's kind of like that plays into how daily life works and stuff like that. But
yeah, I remember watching, I don't remember if it was The Running Man or Total Recall. I think it was Total Recall, where it's on Mars and Arnold Schwarzenegger's the main character.
I think that is Total Recall.
And I just remember like it's a pretty cheesy movie. It doesn't have that good of ratings, but I just remember being fascinated by like the buildings, and like before we had like big LCD TVs, like they would just pop up this thing and the person's face would be there, and it kind of like showing this technology that didn't quite exist yet. And it's just kind of cool. It was cool to me as a kid.
Yeah, definitely.
And as a kid, I didn't really like get the social and political ramifications of it, but I think there was something about it that
for
like
sure.
I felt for some reason.
Well, no, definitely. And I think we grew up, I feel like, in a weird point where we're not old enough at this point where we didn't have major computers and we were seeing them evolve. Like I came in to like our first desktop computer wasn't like a floppy drive base. Like we could use CDs, and we had like little games and stuff we would play on them and things like that. But we definitely didn't have like the top of the line computers, or like cell phones are still like a nice. I remember being in middle school and a Motorola Razr was considered high tech. Like that was a high tech.
That was
phone.
like the
phone.
iPhone basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you had the Razr, you were the cool kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like in the middle school, early high school range. But then getting into high school, that was when the first friend gets a touchscreen phone, and you're like, frick, dude.
I remember getting an iPad or an iPod.
Yeah,
like iPod Touch.
Exactly. Yeah, and, that was the biggest deal in the world. Yeah. Whereas now it's like, how many things can we take off of the touch screen, or how big can we make the touch screen?
Yeah.
And I think we're in what fascinates me going forward, and why I think my love of Cyberpunk stuff keeps growing is it's becoming closer and closer. Like, we're never gonna have like elves and orcs and things like that, but Cyberpunk is like very
it's
creepily on the edge. Yes,
like
of
we're
reality.
almost like, aside from basically Cyberpunk is like where we're at now minus the aesthetic. Like
yeah,
none, like the 80s isn't here anymore, but like we have like almost like cybernetic type stuff, or like we're very tied to like technology. Like we're basically dependent on our phones, and kind of like Black Mirror-esque stuff where like
yeah,
our dependency on technology is almost to the cyberpunk level.
yeah.
In a way.
I think that's a great point. I think it's the idea of how detrimental it would be. Like, what would happen if the internet was down for a day, even like just one day? Like, what would that do to the world? And I think that's kind of what Cyberpunk does, except they ask different questions with more amplified and hyperbolic technology.
Cyberpunk, it's less about the technology itself, which is why I think Black Mirror is a little bit different, and it's more about like the identity, like what is a person.
For sure.
If you can create a human mind out of technology, or like you can create AI that can actually think and feel, and which is weird because in the 80s they didn't have that stuff really. Mm-hmm. And now we actually have like people creating these like AI and robots that like can almost think, and I'm just like, frick, we're gonna have to actually ask these like human questions, like, are these human beings?
Right. Well, even just it's weird. Like, if you think of like Terminator, it's like we're gonna have to start asking Terminator style questions. Do we have a kill switch? Can we shut this down? Is Skynet actually gonna happen? Like, you know,
and is it ethical to just kill millions of robots because one of them is like turning against you? Or like,
yeah, it's weird. It's like these are questions that we are kind of on the cusp of, or like, even do we allow people to have romantic relationships with robots? Like, is that okay? Is, you know, like Futurama even joked about that back in the day, like with basically like, you know, humans and a robot having like a romantic relationship, and there's like a whole, you know, that's like the big thing of the day. Like, they don't care about any other, you know,
social
lifestyle. It's
stuff,
like, no other social issues. It's like the bigger ones are, you know, like, oh, robots and humans can't be together. And it's just very interesting, like, where our social climate is right now with things, and just how that's escalating. And then we're advancing farther and farther in terms of technology every single day. And when is it going to be that we are going to have robots doing things? And like, how is our government going to handle the fact that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs that are taken away because, well, we can make this robot for $100 and it doesn't
do it much more efficiently,
pay or
for way
complain.
less.
And exactly.
Yeah.
Education is going to be a huge thing at that point. Do you know, I know like people make fun of Joe Rogan about it, but it's a legitimate question. Like, do you do something where everyone in the world who is given a certain amount of money just so that you can live? And then like, are there other jobs that open up? Because do we forcibly create a new market so that people can have a living and like not just be forced to eat and walk around all day and do, like, there's just very interesting things that we're like not too far away from. Probably not going to be in our lifetime, but
I think it's interesting because like the cyberpunk, it still has the science fiction aspect where like it's not really coming to fruition the way that they predicted it was coming to fruition, but the ideas are right there. Like,
exactly
all of the things that they were thinking about in the 80s and 90s, like they're happening right now. Like transhumanist rights, we have like the trans movement. Like, who's to say like in 10, 20 years, like when we have technology where like people are more than 50% cybernetically whatever, like, or just that kind of thing where like a lot of the societal questions that were being posited as results of these trends are actually like happening now, which is fascinating to me.
Definitely.
Which I think adds to my interest in the cyberpunk world, because in some ways it's more realistic to the world we live in.
Yeah.
I think it's like, on one hand, there's like the science fiction that's almost like science fantasy, where it's like, this would be a nice world to live in where technology just advances humanity and we basically live in a utopia and people get along and stuff. But like, realistically, like, if we don't keep certain things in check, like the hyper capitalistic, the hyper individualistic stuff could take more hold, where like companies are just controlling the government, or like we have these mega corporations that are basically like controlling monopolies because they have more power than the government. And it's kind of like, it's almost like the flip side of the authoritarian type literature, like 1984 and stuff. Like, what happens if corporations gain all of the power, and then like that trickles down to the lower classes and stuff.
Yep, definitely. I think it just asks very interesting questions as a genre inherently itself. Like, I think other genres, when they're played with, do ask really interesting questions, but I think Cyberpunk is one of those fictional genres that just in its own character, like what it legitimately actually is very like questioning of deeper morals, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But I feel like that pretty much covers the majority of like why we're so obsessed with it.
Yeah, I think so.
But in terms of media that you've really liked or things that you'd recommend, like what are some of the things? I know you have a list on here.
Yeah, I listed some things that I have seen and some things that I haven't seen. I think things that I have seen, I think Blade Runner, you have to.
Oh,
like,
you have to if you're interested at all.
The first Blade Runner is basically like what started like the aesthetic aspects of what Cyberpunk looks like. Because like when you read, like when I'm reading Snow Crash, what I'm picturing is because of what that movie did. Like it's not like described in that way. Or like reading Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, like you wouldn't have gotten any of that out of the book. Like the book itself isn't inherently cyberpunk, other than like the questions of like what is a human sort of. So that movie is like, you just have to see that.
Definitely.
If you want to get into cyberpunk, I feel like. And then also the sequel, 2049. I think it was a very good modern twist on the cyberpunk aesthetic and stuff. So
yep,
I loved that movie.
Oh, it's so good.
I know it's divided for some reason, but
I thought it was fantastic. I feel like it did so much to keep the elements that made the original Blade Runner very unique, but then it just had the modern technology with, you know, different CGI and stuff to, I think, to just make it even cooler, to even present other cool ideas. Like I know there's like the one scene where what the frick is his name? I can't remember. The protagonist is in his apartment. Yeah, I think it's Kay. And his like AI like girlfriend wife thing that he takes around with him like merges with an actual person, and it's very interesting, like just some of the stuff that they do. But then the aesthetic is super cool, and like it just gets so I love it how everything looks.
And they just nailed the vibe with like the noir detective-y aspect, and I think that's a lot of the reason it gets a lot of flack, is because it's just narratively it's very chill in some ways. Like it's not action oriented at all, but I mean I think that's what the first one did too. It's more about the questions that it's positing. It's more about the questions and the world that it's putting forth, I think.
And I think it actually, in that definition, is cyberpunk. Like it's not about exploring and changing the world and making things better or fighting against certain powers. It's this character wants to know what the heck he is and where he comes from and all this stuff, and he's just trying to find out, and that's it. That's
nails that like individualistic. Yeah. So that basically like the internal conflict that the individual has.
Yeah.
So
great movie. Great movies. Watch them.
Both of them, yeah.
Definitely if you're interested.
TV, Altered Carbon, I think narratively it has its off points, I've heard. I liked it, but if I watched it again, I'd probably see more flaws in it. But aesthetically it just nails cyberpunk.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
The low life, high tech, like the rich people can literally like build, like their houses literally extend above the clouds, and they're like these basically like giant towers of Babel that they can live up in, and basically just like literally separate themselves vertically from other people. And then like the idea of like uploading your consciousness, like rich people can afford to have like 50 backups in satellites, so like if they get killed they can just automatically, like their consciousness has been saved like every 5 minutes for the past whatever. And then poor people, like basically you're just dead, you're dead kind of. So it's kind of like it nails the high tech low life, I think. That's also a book called Altered Carbon. So Psycho-Pass is another one.
Season 1 we've watched.
Season 1, we haven't seen season 2.
Yeah, but that one's interesting because it definitely has a cyberpunk vibe, but I think they focus more on like how could the technology be used to turn against you, and it's more about the like it's almost like more on the police side versus like it's an actual institution and what an institution would do and how that messes with stuff versus like an individual taking these things and messing with it. So,
but it has the aesthetic, and it still has like the technology. How does technology disproportionately affect people? Because the main character, I think, gets embroiled in something where like she like keeps freaking out or something, and like her psychopaths or whatever
Well, I thought it's the main villain. You find out basically is like,
oh yeah,
there's a system where so basic synopsis if anyone's interested. So there's like police, and they have these guns that they basically scan your mental stability, I think, more or less.
They can
and
tell if you're going
to
commit a crime.
Right.
Basically.
So if you reach a certain threshold, the gun automatically in its own programmed AI goes to kill. And so the only choice that the officer has is basically like fire it or don't fire it. Like they can't be like, oh nope, this is a mistake. Tone it down.
There's basically no choice once you choose to fire it.
And so they play with that idea though of a snafu of like, well, what happens when you can't identify that? And like what happens when if the whole system is based on this technology to decide whether you're going to commit a crime and you need to be killed, or if you're just freaking the F out because this thing just happened to you and it can't determine between those things. And what happens if it can't even read any of that and it is someone who should be killed? Like it was a very interesting spectrum, I think, and play on things.
The thing that's interesting about that too is a lot of like Japanese media tends to be more like cyberpunk-ish vibe. And I think it's because a lot of like even Blade Runner, I think a lot of the inspiration was like Tokyo at the time. Because Tokyo right now definitely has like that.
I think it's the
vibe
tech capital of the world.
Yeah, like they have the big skyscrapers and stuff like that. So it's kind of like got the vibe that a lot of cyberpunk things use. Because then you also have Akira, which is both a manga and a movie. I don't think there's a show or anything.
No, it's just
and then there's also, what is it called? What's that movie we watched? Ghost in the Shell.
Yes,
which is another one that's about
iconic.
Like androids and different things.
Yep.
So
Ghost in the Shell and Akira are probably two of the most iconic anime things across genre that you can watch, I think.
Yeah.
Because I know Akira, I've heard people, it's more or less like specific YouTubers that have like anime based channels have basically said like, if you're not a manga or an anime fan, you need to watch Akira. Or if you are an anime fan and you haven't seen Akira, you need to watch Akira because the animation is spectacular. It's very weird and interesting. It's from the 90s?
I think so, yeah.
So
it's got that 90s.
Yeah, it's got that 90s
style.
Anime vibe. It's a tight movie.
I think Ghost in the Shell's the same.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I think it was
it's like 90s,
90s,
early 2000s.
Yep. Yeah.
So
that one's a little more trippy. I take that back. Both of those movies are freaking trippy.
Yeah.
But they're...
Yeah, Ghost in the... I've noticed, like... Because a lot of the movies we watched in that class were, like, that kind of thing. And, like, you come away from it thinking, like...
What the heck
did I just watch?
Yeah.
Like that Paprika movie. That's not cyberpunk.
Yes, but that's another interesting one.
But that's
like
how I felt with Ghost
technology
in the
and stuff.
Shell when we watched it. Like,
yeah.
I was like, I didn't hate it, but I
like,
think
what
I
the
need
heck?
to watch it like 2 or 3 more times.
Just to
because
understand.
it's similar to Blade Runner in that respect, where like not a lot of like dialogue happens, and not even like internal monologues. It's just like you have to like pick up cues that you might not even get if you're not Japanese that happen in the movie. And I think it's one of those things that you have to watch a couple times, I think.
Oh yeah.
So
it's pretty short though, I think. I think it's like an hour and a half, maybe less. But
so yeah, that's
good
another
flicks.
one. Another one I didn't put it on here, but The Matrix.
Oh, hands down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's like, it's kind of interesting thinking like the 80s, 90s, like the 80s you got Blade Runner, which is like the very 80s-ish vibe, like cyberpunk.
Well, it's kind of like
and then
when
The Matrix is
like Neuromancer and stuff was coming out, was like, early 80s.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the 80s was like when Blade Runner came out. And then in the 90s, you have like the more anime scene pick it up.
Yep.
Stuff like
and
that.
The Matrix
and
is,
then The Matrix
so,
in the 2000s.
So like, it's such a good movie, but it's so 90s.
It's
like the black jackets and like those goofy looking sunglasses they wear.
Yep. And just like the setting and everything, and like, oh
yeah,
you're the one, Neo. That's
they're
good though.
Such a good movie. I need to watch the second one still.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Yeah, I think there's there's just a lot of media. I mean, I have a whole list here I could just go through, but
Yeah, maybe, I mean, we talk games all the time. I'm going to give a shout out. I'm looking at the list that you had, and specifically, I think game-wise, Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and then they have Mankind Divided, which is also out. Those are both really, really good games. They're more stealth-based.
more modern stealth.
Yeah, they're modern. They're modern, so you can actually play them pretty easily.
Yeah, there's a couple older, like the original Deus Ex games on
Yeah, or
PC.
like System Shock. I actually think I
Yeah.
have System Shock.
Same.
I wanted to play that just because it looks freaky as F. But
yeah.
yeah, Deus Ex. I finished Human Revolution. I have Mankind Divided. I want to play it. I was waiting until the PS4 Pro got here because it's one of the games that actually boosted.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, ooh, it's gonna look great. But that was a very super Cyberpunk game. So that
Yep.
again, each of these things is gonna have its own bend, and Cyberpunk is a very broad umbrella.
Yeah, the interesting is like Cyberpunk is a type of like it's almost like you associate it with a type of world, but then the
Yeah.
narrative that gets told in that world can be a detective noir story or like an individual journey story, and it kind of
Yeah.
like varies across the
Yeah,
board.
some of it is like there's actually like robots. Some of it's there's no robots. Some of it is there's crazy technology. Some of it is people are enhanced with robotics. Some of it is, I don't know. There's AI and stuff. I also forgot. I'm so glad I remembered this, but Ex Machina.
Oh yeah,
That is a great film.
yeah.
It's a great film. You should just watch it. But in terms of like the Turing test, which is an AI buzzword of like, when does a AI become sentient and like what questions can you ask? And Ex Machina is probably up there as one of my favorite films ever. It's just
So
it's
good.
so trippy,
Yeah.
but you can understand everything that's going on, and it's just very weird and
It's so tense.
oh,
The whole movie
it's an
is just
intense
tense.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just very. There's like tons of moments of extreme discomfort, but watch that film. It's only like an hour and a half, and it's probably one of the best movies I've seen. Just
And
in
it's
general.
it's definitely one of those movies that like shakes you out of that mindset of the pop culture puts you in, like
Yeah,
hoping for the right ending, and this movie kind of like subverts that in some
very
way.
much so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's very interesting.
oh,
Definitely watch it.
I forgot about that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good.
You want to close out with just the books? I think book wise, there's going to be a huge list.
Yeah, I mean the main
more
ones I
so.
put on here were Snow Crash, Neuromancer, because those are what we're reading.
Yep.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? If we're just going by authors, pretty much anything William Gibson has written. A lot of Neil Stephenson books are Cyberpunk, which is Snow Crash's author.
Yeah.
Philip Dick, he's the one who wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Not all of his are Cyberpunk per se, but a lot of his are like the predecessor to the ideas that come up in Cyberpunk. There's the Altered Carbon books. There was a whole list online. I didn't put them all on here because it would have just
If you just
it would have
Google
been too much to start off with.
Yeah.
So
We wanted to list these specific ones because we have experience with them, and so
Yeah.
we're like,
and I think like
out.
especially for TV, because I know a lot of people are TV people.
Yeah,
There's not a ton of aesthetically that does the Cyberpunk other than like Altered Carbon. And if you look on Netflix, there's actually a couple movies that have like that vibe to it. But there's a show called Orphan Black, which deals with.
I've seen an episode of that. That is a pretty dope show.
So it's not like I don't think it's aesthetically cyberpunk, but the ideas are there as far as like
yes,
yeah.
robots,
Mr.
and
Robot,
things.
which I've heard the main character in Mr. Robot is based off of Case from Neuromancer.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
he's kind of like a hacker. Like he's got like I don't know if he has schizophrenia or something, but he's got like split personality disorder or something. He's just like this like
I've heard really good things about that show.
Yeah.
I need to check that out.
It's on my list of shows.
Do you
that I
know
need
if
to
it's
get
on
back to.
Hulu or
I think it's on
Netflix?
Amazon Prime.
Oh,
Well,
crud.
technically it's USA. It's a USA show, but I think it's on
Okay.
Prime.
Shoot.
But I would check Hulu and Netflix just to be safe.
Yeah.
It's a good
Sick.
show. I saw the first season. It's like it's hard to explain. It's very good. Like the narrative as it unfolds and stuff is just like trippy, and like they play with like the idea of like reality and like what you're seeing isn't necessarily actually what's happening and kind of like that. So
Sick.
and then I threw Westworld on here. I think like the show itself is Western, but like the ideas in the show are cyberpunk, and the world I imagine the world outside of the theme park is a cyberpunky type futuristic dystopian world. So So yeah, that's the crux of it. Another game I found is called Observer, which somehow passed my radar. It's like a first-person shooter cyberpunk
I haven't
game.
heard of that one.
So,
Do you know what generation that was?
it's this generation, and
Is
it came out for PS. It's on PS4 too.
Oh.
It's
Huh.
it's like it's basically like BioShock kind of game. Like it's a
Weird.
first-person narrative-driven like upgrade, like almost like a little bit of RPG elements, but it's like definitely like a walking sim type shooter, and like it's got horror elements and body modifications and stuff like that. So I've heard
Wild.
good things about it.
Cool.
So-
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Tight.
So yeah, that's the main thing.
Sick.
That's Cyberpunk in a nutshell. So
It is.
if you want to get ready for Cyberpunk
2077
2077 and hop on the hype train, like if you want any more recommendations, just hit us up and we'll
shoot us an
we'll see
email.
what we can find. So
Yep.
we're pretty hyped on it right now. So
Yes.
keep riding that train.
Yes.
Yeah.
Until it comes. Dude,
Hopefully next year, but probably 2020.
I'm so excited. I'm
Yeah.
so excited. I can't contain it.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, we're going to have to wait for a while. But
Yep.
until then, you can keep listening to our show and tune in every week on
Yeah, buddy.
iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, I guess TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. It's still
It's
updates.
still there.
It's still there. You can also follow us on Twitter. The podcast feed is at Pop Culture Punks, and our Gmail to send in any questions, comments, topics, what have you, is popculturepunks@gmail.com. You can follow each of us individually on Twitter. Phil is I am Phil Sorensen. I am at Six Wing Creative. Zach is C San Pellegrino, and our boy Chris is at Chris of the Vast. You can check out Threadless and Redbubble for merch, and keep an eye out on our Twitter page because Threadless sent me this random email that I didn't know that they did this, but this is pretty dope. They give a one-time use $10 coupon code off of an item. So if you want to use it for something that we made, or if you want to get some, there's a ton of other cool artists and designs and stuff on there. We'll be throwing that on our Twitter. So if you just Google at Pop Culture Punks on Twitter, I think you can literally just look through the page if you just want to use it the one time. When it's gone, and I guess we'll see what happens. So
Yep.
so keep your eyes out on our Twitter feed next couple days. And yeah. You know what? I'm going to set a time. Look for... I just was like, how should I do this? I literally just remembered this off the top of my head. Keep your eyes on our Twitter Wednesday at noon. Wednesday at noon is when it goes up. So, yeah. First come, first serve. Whoever finds it, we'll just literally post the code. Whoever gets it, gets it.
Yeah, buddy.
And that's how it will be. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? I think that's it.
I'll throw it out there that I think we still have stickers, so we'll just say if
Yes, we
you
do.
want a free sticker, just shoot us an email. You don't even have to ask a question or do anything. Just say, hey, I want a sticker, and we'll be like, cool, give us your address or whatever.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you post it on this thing and I'll come by and grab it? We could do that.
We
I guess.
could do that. We can't guarantee
Sure.
you'll be able to get it off, but yeah, sure.
Or some drifter won't come by and steal
Ooh, that's
it.
a cool sticker.
I like that sticker. It'll go great for wiping my bum.
So yeah, we still have a giant stack of those.
Yeah.
So
We need to do something with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so hit us up. Other than that, this has been the Pop Culture Punks. We're talking JRPGs next week, right? Is that right? We sticking by that?
yes,
Well, it's been said, so...
we'll do JRPGs and a Venom review.
Oh! No, we're doing Venom review.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We're doing a Venom review next week. The week after will be JRPGs. And then keep tuned, maybe. We'll think about it.
Depends on timelines.
Depends on
Yeah.
timelines. Definitely keep in tune for what day is that? October 28th. Our episode for the weekend of October 28th, which will be it'll be the Sunday before Halloween. We'll be doing some like scary movie horror review and just kind of discussing. So we will update you in a couple weeks what those movies are. So if you want to tune in and hear our thoughts. Other than that, this has been the Pop Culture Punks. I love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow. Sorry, Philly D. I ripped that hard. I watch a show every day, so I'm just
Same.
like, every time I close out, I'm like, that's what I want to say every time.
Sup, you beautiful
Sup,
punks.
Sup, you beautiful punks. But this has been the Culture Punks Podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. And with that, I bid you a fine cowabunga.
Job security, but I've been dreaming about packing it all up, cause the war in me just won't relent till there's nothing left but dust. So what do you do when the walls start closing in, and everyone you love tells you it's all just in your head?